When we think of ancient Africa, we often picture pyramids and pharaohs, vast savannas and powerful kingdoms. But there's another story, a hidden history stamped into small pieces of metal. This is the story of Africa's coins. For centuries before coins, trade happened through barter. People exchanged goods like salt, cattle, or beads. But this system had its limits. How many goats is a bag of grain worth? To solve this problem, societies needed a standard measure of value. The idea of coinage, which began in ancient Lydia, in what's now Turkey, slowly made its way to the African continent, forever changing the face of trade, power, and identity. The first coins to circulate in Africa were not African in origin. They were introduced by Greek traders and settlers. Around the 6th century BCE, Greek city-states established colonies along the Mediterranean coast of North Africa. One of the most important was Cyrene, in what is now Libya. These Greeks brought their silver coins with them, stamped with images of their gods and symbols of their cities. Local African communities, including the ancient Libyans, saw how useful these little metal discs were. They were easy to carry, their value was known, and they made trade much simpler than bartering livestock. This was the spark that ignited Africa's long and fascinating journey with currency. The real revolution began when Africans started making their own coins. The Kingdom of Egypt, under the rule of the Ptolemaic dynasty, became one of the first major African powers to mint its own currency. After Alexander the Great conquered Egypt, his general Ptolemy I took over. He and his descendants started producing a vast array of gold, silver, and bronze coins. These weren't just for trade. They were a powerful form of propaganda. Each coin was stamped with the ruler's portrait, a way of showing the public who was in charge. It was a message of power you could hold in your hand, a tangible connection to the distant king or queen. This new technology of money wasn't just a convenience. It was a fundamental shift in how societies were organized. Coins allowed rulers to pay soldiers, collect taxes more efficiently, and fund massive public works projects. For the common person, it created new economic opportunities. A farmer could sell his surplus grain for coins and use that money to buy tools or other goods. It was the beginning of a cash economy, a concept that would spread and evolve across the continent over thousands of years. The story of Africa's coins is the story of its people, their ambitions, their beliefs, and their connections to a wider world. In North Africa, the great city of Carthage rose as a major sea power. Originally a Phoenician colony, it grew into a massive empire that rivaled Rome. The Carthaginians were master traders, and they needed a reliable currency for their vast network. Starting around the 4th century BCE, they began minting their own distinctive coins from gold, silver, and an alloy called electrum. These coins often featured the head of their patron goddess Tanit on one side and a horse on the other, a symbol of their military strength and commercial reach. These powerful images traveled across the Mediterranean, from Spain to Sicily, showcasing the wealth and influence of this African empire. Further south, along the Red Sea coast in modern-day Ethiopia and Eritrea, another great kingdom emerged, Aksum. The Aksumite Empire was a major player in the trade routes connecting the Roman Empire with India. Around the 3rd century CE, King Indubis of Aksum made a groundbreaking decision. He began issuing coins, making Aksum one of the very first African-led states to do so. Early Aksumite coins were made of gold and silver and featured the king's portrait, often framed by 2 ears of grain, symbolizing the kingdom's prosperity. These coins were also remarkable because they included inscriptions in both Greek, the international language of trade, and Ge'ez, the local Aksumite script. The coins of Aksum tell a powerful story of cultural change. When King Ezana converted to Christianity in the 4th century CE, the coins changed with him. The traditional crescent and disc symbol of the old gods was replaced by the Christian cross. This made Axum one of the first states in the world to feature the cross on its coinage. It was a bold declaration of faith stamped onto the very currency that fueled the empire's economy. For historians, these coins are like tiny time capsules, providing clear evidence of this pivotal moment in African history. The message was clear: Axum was a Christian kingdom, and its power was divine. While Egypt, Carthage, and Axum were major minting powers, they weren't the only ones. In the lands south of Egypt, the Kingdom of Kush, also known as Nubia, had a complex relationship with currency. For a long time, the Nubians relied on barter and trade goods like gold dust. While they didn't produce their own coins for much of their history, Roman and Ptolemaic coins have been found at Nubian archaeological sites like Meroe. This shows that they were deeply connected to the monetary economies of their neighbors. These ancient coins are the surviving whispers of Africa's powerful early empires, each one a testament to their innovation and global influence. With the spread of Islam across North Africa starting in the 7th century CE, the world of coinage underwent another dramatic transformation. Islamic law discouraged the use of portraits on coins, viewing them as a form of idolatry. As a result, the faces of rulers vanished, replaced by beautiful and intricate Arabic calligraphy. The new coins, primarily the gold dinar and the silver dirham, were stamped with verses from the Quran and the name of the ruling caliph. This created a unified currency system that stretched from Spain to Central Asia, facilitating a golden age of trade and intellectual exchange across the Islamic world. This new style of currency became the standard for centuries. In vibrant cities like Cairo in Egypt and Kairouan in Tunisia, mints produced millions of these coins. They were known for their high purity and standardized weight, which made them trusted across different cultures and regions. A merchant in Morocco could accept a gold dinar minted in Egypt with full confidence in its value. This reliability fueled the trans-Saharan trade routes, where these coins were exchanged for West African gold, salt, ivory, and enslaved people. The Islamic dinar became the dollar of its day, a universal currency that connected Africa to the Middle East and Europe. One of the most fascinating coins from this era is the Kilwa Sultanate coin. Kilwa was a prosperous Swahili trading city on the coast of modern-day Tanzania. From the 13th to the 15th centuries, the sultans of Kilwa minted their own unique copper coins. These were some of the first coins ever minted in sub-Saharan Africa. They were not designed for international trade like the gold dinar, but for everyday local use in the bustling markets of Kilwa. Finding these small copper pieces helps archaeologists understand the daily life and economic sophistication of the Swahili coast civilization, a world away from the great empires of the north. Beyond official currency, Africa has a long history of using other objects as money. These are known as trade currencies. In West Africa, cowrie shells imported from the Indian Ocean were used as a common form of money for centuries, especially for smaller transactions. In the Congo region, large cross-shaped copper ingots, called Katanga crosses, were a recognized store of wealth and could be used to pay for major purchases, like a bride price. These non-standard forms of money show the diverse and creative ways that African societies solved the problem of trade long before and alongside minted coins. The arrival of European colonial powers in the 15th and 16th centuries marked a new chapter in the story of African money. Initially, European traders brought their own currencies, like the Portuguese real and the Spanish dollar, to trade for African goods. But as their influence grew, and they established colonies, they began to introduce new monetary systems designed to integrate African economies with their own. This was not just about economics, it was about control. By replacing local currencies and trade goods with colonial money, European powers asserted their authority and tied the colonies' fortunes to the metropole. The British, for example, created the West African pound for their colonies in Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, and the Gambia. These coins and banknotes looked British, often featuring the portrait of the reigning monarch, like Queen Victoria or King George V. However, they were specifically for use in Africa. Some coins had unique features, like a hole in the middle. This was supposedly done to make it easier for people to string them together, but it also clearly distinguished them from the coins used back in Britain. It was a constant reminder of colonial status, a currency that was related to, but separate from that of the ruling power. The French, Belgians, and Germans did the same in their respective territories. The French created the CFA franc, a currency zone that continues in parts of West and Central Africa to this day. The Belgians introduced the Congolese franc, and the Germans issued the German East African rupee. These colonial currencies often replaced a complex mix of traditional and international money. While they simplified transactions in some ways, they also disrupted local economic practices and made colonies dependent on European financial systems. The images on the coins, European monarchs and colonial emblems, symbolized a new order of power. Some of the rarest and most interesting coins from this period come from moments of crisis or unique circumstances. During World War I, when German East Africa was cut off from Germany, the local government had to improvise. In the city of Tabora, they produced emergency coins from melted down brass, including spent ammunition cartridges. These Tabora pounds or gunmetal coins are crude but fascinating pieces of history. They feature an elephant on one side and the German imperial eagle on the other, a symbol of a colonial empire desperately trying to hold on in the face of war. These coins are a tangible link to a turbulent and transformative period in African history. The mid-20th century was a period of profound change across Africa. As one nation after another gained independence from colonial rule, one of the first acts of a new sovereign state was to issue its own currency. This was a powerful symbol of national identity and a declaration of economic freedom. The portraits of European kings and queens were replaced with images that celebrated the nation's own heroes, culture, and natural heritage. The new coins featured the faces of independence leaders like Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, Jomo Kenyatta of Kenya, and Julius Nyerere of Tanzania. The era of colonial money was over. These new national currencies were a canvas for expressing a newfound identity. Coins were decorated with images of important cash crops like cocoa and coffee, majestic wildlife like lions and eagles, and symbols of cultural significance like masks and traditional tools. For the first time, the money in people's pockets reflected their own world. Some countries made bold design choices. The new Ghanaian cedi, for example, was named after the Akan word for cowrie shell, linking the modern economy back to its pre-colonial roots. Each new coin was a small but significant step in the process of nation building and decolonization. Today, African coins have captured the imagination of collectors around the world. Numismatists, people who study and collect coins, seek out rare and valuable pieces that tell a piece of the continent's story. Some of the most sought-after coins include the gold dinars of ancient Islamic dynasties, the Aksumite coins bearing the first Christian cross, and the emergency gun-metal money from World War I. Even modern coins can be valuable, especially those with minting errors. For instance, a coin struck off-center or with a mistaken date can be worth many times its face value to a passionate collector. The interest in African numismatics is more than just a hobby. It is a way of preserving and understanding history. Each coin, from the smallest copper piece from Kilwa to a heavy gold coin from the Ptolemaic dynasty, is an artifact. It tells us about trade, power, religion, and art. It connects us to the people who held it, used it, and saw their world reflected in its design. As we continue to unearth and study these hidden coins, we gain a richer, more detailed picture of Africa's vast and complex past, a history written not just in books, but stamped in silver, gold, and bronze.